My beloved granddaughter laughed at me, as if I weren't a person but a shadow that had accidentally lingered in the room. She rolled her eyes, called me offline, snorted that I wouldn't understand anything anyway. After all, I didn't even have Instagram. The others giggled, and their laughter echoed inside me like a crack across delicate porcelain. With one sentence, she erased me from her reality, and I smiled, quietly, tightly, as if that was all an old woman was allowed to do: stay silent, bake pies, and disappear without a sound. But that night, I didn't go to sleep. By the next morning, she wasn't laughing, she wasn't speaking, she couldn't even look me in the eye, and I simply sat on the porch with my tea, for the first time in a very long while, not silent, but heard. If this story resonated with your soul, click subscribe and let me know in the comments which city or country you're listening from. I'm truly curious to know where you're tuning in from. It was a Sunday evening in late October, the kind of evening when the air in Maple Glen, Pennsylvania, felt like something in between memory and smoke. Leaves had started to fall in uneven piles across the back porch, and the sun disappeared faster than it used to. The sky was already dark by 6, and the house smelled of baked chicken and rosemary biscuits. I had cooked, of course. I always did on Sundays. It was the one time of the week the whole family still sat down together, or at least pretended to. My son Mark had picked me up that morning from my apartment on Chestnut Lane. He lived on the other side of town, near the newer part of Maple Glen, where all the houses looked like they were copy-pasted from a real estate flyer. Clean white siding, black shutters, professionally landscaped lawns. Mark had done well for himself. Senior systems analyst or something like that. He didn't talk much about his work anymore, just said it was boring but stable. His wife Dina was a realtor, always perfectly put together, always speaking like every sentence might become a slogan for a billboard. Their daughter, my granddaughter, was named Riley. She'd just turned 16, a beautiful girl, tall like her father, with my mother's cheekbones and hair she dyed too often. Her smile could light up a room, but her eyes had that teenage glaze. Half disdain, half disinterest. Everything was either beneath her or irrelevant. I remembered that age. I remembered how everything seemed like it was happening too slow. Dinner was ready by 5:30. I set the table while they sat in the living room with their phones. I heard the buzz of notifications, the occasional forced laugh, the swiping of fingers against glass. The only sound that belonged to the house was the timer ding from the oven. When I called them in, they came slowly, as if the walk to the dining room was a burden. Riley didn't look up from her phone as she took her seat. She just shifted her thumbs across the screen and muttered something about her story still uploading. I had placed the chicken in a glass dish at the center of the table, surrounded by roasted carrots and buttered rolls. The gravy steamed in its small ceramic bowl. Everything looked the way it always had, but the energy was different, stretched thin like old elastic. They passed plates and murmured thanks. I tried to make small talk, asked Riley how school was going, if she was thinking about colleges yet. She snorted and said, "Nobody uses college anymore. Everyone's just building their brand online." Mark chuckled. Dina gave her that look mothers give when they want to correct but are too tired to bother. I asked what kind of brand she meant. She rolled her eyes and finally looked at me, phone still in a hand. "Like Instagram. You wouldn't get it, Grandma. You don't even have social media, right?" I said no. I didn't. Never needed it. And then she said it. "That's why you're invisible. You don't exist if you're not online." The words hit harder than she intended, I think. She said it with the flippant cruelty only teenagers know how to wield. where humor and venom blur until even they don't know which one they meant. Dina laughed. Not maliciously, but enough to let it pass. Mark said nothing. He took another bite of chicken and reached for the salt. I smiled, or at least I tried to. I had mastered the art of smiling without letting it touch my eyes, a skill I learned in courtrooms long before Riley was born. I told her I liked being invisible. It gave me more time to listen. She didn't hear me. She was already back on her phone, screen lighting up her face in that blue glow that made her look more like a ghost than a girl. The rest of the meal passed in silence. Plates scraped, water glasses clinked. I ate slowly, watched them. They were all together, and yet no one was present. Riley left the table first, claimed she had editing to do. I heard her footsteps climb the stairs, heard her door close. Mark and Dina lingered for a few minutes, but even they had run out of things to say. When they finally left the table, they thanked me like they were checking a box, like my effort had been expected, not appreciated. I cleared the dishes alone, stacked them neatly by the sink, washed each one with care. The suds clung to my fingers, and I let the water run hotter than usual. I needed to feel something sharper than embarrassment. My reflection in the kitchen window looked older than usual. Lines deeper, eyes smaller. I wondered if they really saw me at all anymore, or if Riley had been right. Maybe I had vanished the moment I stopped keeping up. Maybe being present at dinner wasn't enough, not for this world. That night, when Mark drove me back to my place, we barely spoke. He had some podcast playing in the car, something about productivity or finance. He dropped me off at the curb, gave me a hug that felt more like a pat, said he'd call next week. He didn't notice that I held on to the hug a second longer than usual. Inside my apartment, I turned on a lamp and sat on the edge of my bed. The house was quiet, still. No buzzing, no screens, no updates, just me and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I looked at my phone, the same one I'd had for years, basic, reliable, barely used. I opened the App Store, searched one word, Instagram, and for the first time in a long time, I downloaded something new. The night after that dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles. The air in my apartment felt heavier than usual, as if it had soaked up the silence that had followed me home. Outside, the streets of Burlington, Vermont were quiet. No passing cars, no laughter from neighbors, just the occasional rustling of branches in the wind and the soft ticking of the wall clock above my dresser. I kept hearing her voice in my head, Riley, my granddaughter, 16 years old, full of fire and arrogance. She'd always been sharp-tongued, but something about her tone that evening had sunk into me deeper than it should have. Maybe it wasn't even her words. Maybe it was the way no one contradicted her, the way they let it hang in the air like a truth, invisible. That's what she said. Like I didn't exist because I didn't have a digital footprint. Like everything I had done in my life, every trial I argued, every paper I published, every certificate on my wall had been erased the moment I stopped chasing trends. I got up around midnight. My knees popped the way they always did, and my slippers made soft sounds against the wooden floor as I walked into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the table, and stared at my phone. It was an old model, nothing fancy, no face recognition or fancy widgets, just calls, texts, weather, and the occasional photo of a bird on my windowsill. It wasn't that I didn't know how to use modern tech. I had simply chosen not to. For years, I had told myself it was unnecessary, that I didn't need to be part of that world, that I had earned the right to live quietly. But Riley made me question something I hadn't questioned in a long time. whether I had made myself irrelevant. I tapped the screen. The light felt harsh in the dark kitchen. I opened the App Store. I typed slowly, each letter deliberate. I typed Instagram and let the words sit there for a moment before I hit download. A blue ring circled as it loaded, and I sat there, my hand on the table, my heart oddly unsettled. When it finished installing, I hesitated. Then I opened it. The app asked for a name, a photo, a bio. I skipped them all. I didn't want to be known. Not yet. I just wanted to see. I created a blank account with a throwaway username and followed no one. Not at first. The interface confused me a little. Stories, reels, feeds. It felt like stepping into a mall where everyone was shouting at once. I searched for Riley's name. There she was. Her profile was public. Of course it was. She wanted to be seen, to be followed. Her bio was filled with emojis, song lyrics, and a link to something called a Finsta. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I bookmarked it to look up later. I scrolled through her photos. There were so many. Posed selfies with perfect lighting, beach shots with friends, mirror pics with filtered skin and highlighted captions. She looked older than she was. Not in the way of wrinkles, but in posture, in gaze, in confidence. Like she was performing a version of herself she hadn't grown into yet. The comments were worse than the photos. Boys calling her fire. Girls telling her she looked unreal. Laughing emojis, heart emojis, a sea of shallow validation. I kept scrolling. The deeper I went, the less I recognized her. This wasn't the girl who used to curl up in my lap with picture books or ask me about constellations. It wasn't that she was posting things that were dangerous exactly, but they were careless. Too much skin, too many implications, phrases that hinted at things she didn't yet understand. I could see how she was building a persona, someone louder, riskier, edgier than she was in real life. And then I found the Finsta. I had to search for it manually. It wasn't under her name, but it didn't take long. The username was a twist on an inside joke I remembered hearing her say once. The profile photo was blurry, the name untagged. But I knew it was her. This account was private. I requested to follow. I didn't expect her to accept. But 5 minutes later, she did. She probably thought I was a bot or someone from school. She didn't even question it. And what I found in that private space made my chest tighten. Photos at parties I didn't know she attended. Drinks in red Solo cups. Boys twice her age. Posts mocking classmates, mocking teachers. Comments that danced on the edge of bullying, if not tipping all the way in. Her language was meaner here. Her smile more forced. The captions weren't clever. They were sad, insecure, clawing for attention. I saw pain under the surface. And desperation. I sat there for nearly an hour, scrolling, reading, saving things I wasn't sure why I needed to save. Maybe to protect her. Maybe to protect others. Maybe just because I didn't want to forget what I saw. By the time I went to bed, the sun was starting to rise. The birds were just beginning to sing, and the edges of the sky had turned gray-blue. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and closed my eyes. I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. I had entered their world. And I had no intention of leaving. I spent the next week gathering. I didn't rush. I moved slowly, methodically, like a woman sorting through old boxes in the attic. Each night, after the sun slipped behind the trees in Portland, Maine, and the cold settled in through the windows, I would make myself a cup of chamomile tea, wrap a blanket around my shoulders, and open the app again. It was 2024, but the glow of that screen felt like a portal to something timeless and dangerous. a place where memory could be edited, reality twisted, and truth buried beneath filters and trending audios. Riley, my granddaughter, had no idea I was watching, that in her eagerness to be seen by the world, she had made herself transparent to me. She posted every day, sometimes twice, sometimes more. I began documenting each post like an archivist. Screenshots were stored into neatly labeled folders on my laptop. I titled them plainly: posts, stories, comments, messages. I didn't just save images. I saved conversations, usernames, timestamps. I saved evidence. What disturbed me most wasn't the content itself, although some of it made my stomach tighten. It was the consistency, the way she had built an alternate self through curated chaos. She'd created a second life where nothing mattered but attention, likes, reactions, and replies. Her real self, the girl who once asked me to help her make pancakes and cried when she scraped her knee, was nowhere to be found. On her real account, Riley was polished, all sunshine and sparkle, pastel filters, cropped smiles, poses that made her look older than she was. I saw her in designer hoodies, tight jeans, glossy lips. She spoke in captions written like mantras: vibes only, living my truth, no bad days. I saw through it, all of it, but on the private account, the Finsta, it was a different world. There she cursed, she drank, she mocked classmates by name. She shared blurry videos from dimly lit basements with music so loud it distorted the speakers. There were boys, too many boys. One in particular kept appearing in the background, his arm slung over her shoulder, red-eyed and smirking. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a high school, and she didn't look like someone who wanted to be in one. I saw her take risks that terrified me. I saw her comment under someone's post with cruel emojis and a thinly veiled insult. I saw her post screenshots of group chats, private messages, laughing about people she called friends. It wasn't just immaturity, it was calculated. A performance, yes, but a cruel one. I tried not to judge, but I couldn't lie to myself. It hurt. It scared me. I saw a girl who was slipping inch by inch into a digital version of herself that had no boundaries, no filter, and no concern for consequence. And I couldn't shake the question, where were her parents in all this? Mark and Dina weren't oblivious. They were distracted. Dina was always running around, juggling open houses and staging projects. Mark stayed late at the office, claimed it was crunch season, though I suspected he just wanted the quiet. Riley had mastered the art of invisibility, not by disappearing, but by overwhelming, by being so loud and so present online that no one bothered to look beneath the noise. One night, I found a video in her stories that made me freeze. It was short, maybe 15 seconds, shot vertically. She was in a car. There was laughter in the background. Her face filled the screen. She was wearing lipstick, far too dark for her skin tone, and her pupils were too wide. In the corner of the video, a bottle flashed briefly, then it cut off. Just like that. A fleeting moment. But I saw enough. I saved the clip, named the file Driving. It joined dozens of others in the folder that had grown heavier with each passing night. It wasn't just about what she was doing, it was about what she was documenting. She didn't think twice. She posted recklessly, forgetting that everything on the internet was permanent, that eyes might be watching, that nothing disappears. And maybe that was what haunted me most. That she didn't understand the value of privacy, that she didn't know what it meant to hold parts of yourself sacred, to protect what's real, to leave something unsaid. In my world, things that mattered lived off the record. In hers, nothing mattered unless it was documented. I began keeping a handwritten log. Old habits die hard. A legal pad with neat bullet points, date, post, caption, action. I wrote in black ink, my handwriting slow and steady. It gave me a sense of control in a space designed to take it away. I wasn't doing this to punish her. At least that's what I told myself. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I just couldn't look away. I couldn't ignore what I saw. Because if I stayed silent, if I let it all slide past me, then I would be just as complicit as the strangers who double-tapped her chaos and moved on. And maybe, deep down, I was also preserving something. Proof of the girl I had once known. Or maybe proof of the one she was becoming. Each night I sat in that kitchen, the light dim above me, and I watched her build a version of herself that couldn't last. And with every screenshot, I wondered how far she would go before something finally broke, and whether I was the one who'd have to break it. By the second week of November, the trees in Providence, Rhode Island had lost most of their leaves. The sidewalks were littered with brittle remnants of color, and the sky hung low and gray, promising early snow. I bundled myself in my coat and walked to the market every morning just to breathe air that wasn't filtered through LED screens and Bluetooth devices. It gave me time to think, time to process what I was becoming. I wasn't sure when concern had turned into strategy. It wasn't a moment, it was a slow drip. One image at a time, one story at a time. I hadn't planned to intervene. I truly hadn't. But after nights of watching Riley post pieces of herself she couldn't get back, I knew I couldn't keep sitting on the sidelines like I had for the past year. I had to do something. But I also knew that saying something, just speaking, would never work. She didn't listen to lectures. She didn't respond to warnings. If anything, confrontation only made her perform louder. It wasn't that she didn't care about the truth, she just didn't believe it applied to her. So I began to plan. Slowly. Carefully. The first step was getting off the sidelines. I deleted the blank account I had been using to watch. It served its purpose, and I was tired of hiding in a shadow of numbers and silence. I made a new one. This time it was mine. Real photo, real name. I uploaded an old picture of me in my garden, hands in the dirt, sleeves rolled up, smiling at something off camera. The caption read, "Back to the roots." I followed no one. I wanted them to come to me. I started posting daily, not selfies, not posed images, but things that reflected who I was before I got lost in their background. A picture of a casebook I used to teach from, a video of me making pie crust from scratch, a photo of the courtroom steps I climbed every morning for 12 years. The responses were slow at first, polite likes from distant relatives and a few retired colleagues. But eventually, Riley saw it. I knew she had. Her patterns changed. She made fewer posts that week. Her stories were shorter. Her captions grew quieter. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her attention shift. I had disrupted the narrative she built, simply by existing outside it. Then came the second part of the plan, curating the message. I sorted through the screenshots I had saved, the clips, the comments. I selected the ones that said the most with the least. I wasn't looking to shame her. I was looking to hold up a mirror. I chose 3 images. One, a screenshot of her mocking a classmate for wearing thrifted clothes. Another, a caption from her Finsta where she bragged about cheating on an exam, laughing at how adults are too easy to fool. And the third, a video of her at a party, clearly intoxicated, stumbling as she flipped off the camera. I wrote a caption. I rewrote it 20 times. It had to say just enough, not too much, not too little. I didn't want to destroy her. I just wanted to stop her before she destroyed herself. I settled on this. Sometimes we forget who's watching. Sometimes we forget we're watching ourselves. I scheduled the post. I used an app for that, something I had never done before. I set it to go live on a Friday evening, right before dinner, when most teenagers were scrolling through their phones, trying to find plans or validation. It was the perfect time. The third part of the plan was preparing for the aftermath. I knew there would be backlash, confusion, denial, anger, maybe even fear. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I'd spent too much time letting fear keep me quiet, afraid to lose her, afraid to seem out of touch, afraid to be the one who took away her freedom. But the truth was, she didn't know what freedom was. Not really. I drafted a letter to Mark and Dina. I didn't plan to send it unless I needed to, but I wanted it ready. In it, I explained everything. The account, the screenshots, the post, why I did it, how I got there. I left nothing out, no emotion, no excuse. Just facts written plainly from one adult to two others who had forgotten how much their daughter was still learning. The last part of the plan was prayer. Not the kind you do with hands folded in church pews, the kind you whisper in the dark when you're not sure if you're doing the right thing. But every cell in your body tells you silence is no longer love. I didn't pray for her to be punished. I prayed for her to wake up, to see the space between the person she was pretending to be and the one she still had time to become. On the day before the post went live, I baked cookies. Not because anyone would come over, but because I needed the house to smell like something good. I played Billie Holiday on vinyl and let the music fill the rooms. I watered my houseplants. I ironed napkins I didn't plan to use. I lived my day like it was any other, because I wanted to remember who I was, just in case everything changed tomorrow. It was early evening in Asheville, North Carolina. The light had turned that particular shade of gold that only lasts 10 minutes before the sky folds into dusk. The town moved slower this time of year, mid-November, just before the real cold set in. I could hear wind brushing against the old oak outside my window, and in the kitchen the kettle began to whine softly. I turned off the burner and poured the hot water over my chamomile tea, letting the scent calm my nerves, though nothing in my body felt calm. The post was scheduled for 6 p.m. sharp. I had checked it twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. The images were already cropped, framed, and captioned. The caption had taken me hours to settle on. I didn't want it to sound bitter. I didn't want to scold. I wanted it to reflect weight, consequence, not a warning, but a reflection. I had written, "We become what we post. Every word, every gesture, every joke we make in public says more than we realize. Maybe it's time someone said it back." The account was under my name, Margaret L. Hart. No initials, no username games, no hiding. I didn't tag Riley, I didn't use hashtags, I didn't direct it toward anyone, but I knew exactly who it was for, and I knew exactly who would see it. I sat at the dining table, the phone screen dark, resting in front of me like a closed door. The house was quiet. No television, no music, just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint creak of the wooden floor beneath my slippers. Outside, the last of the daylight slipped behind the hills. I could see porch lights beginning to flicker on up the street. Somewhere, someone was raking leaves. Somewhere, someone was setting a table. Life, indifferent to digital consequence, went on. And then, at exactly 6 o'clock, the notification lit up on my phone. "Your post is now live." I didn't touch the phone. I let it sit. I reached instead for my tea, lifted it to my lips, and took a slow sip. The steam curled upward, warming my cheeks. I breathed deeply. I waited. It didn't take long. By 6:07, I heard the first vibration, then another and another. The phone pulsed gently across the table like a heartbeat. By 6:12, it buzzed continuously. I reached for it, not to check comments or likes, but to silence the notifications. I turned off the sound, placed the phone back on the table, and folded my hands in my lap. At 6:17, I received a text from Dina, Riley's mother. Just 2 words. "What's this?" I didn't answer. At 6:23, another message, this time from an unknown number, a classmate of Riley's perhaps, or a parent. I didn't open it. I had done what I came to do. The rest was theirs. I stood, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain back slightly. The street outside looked no different than it had an hour ago. The air had cooled. A man jogged past in a sweatshirt, earphones in. A dog barked in the distance. Everything looked the same. But I knew the world inside their screens had already started to shift. At 6:30, the phone began ringing. I recognized the number. Mark, my son. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I declined it. The third time, I turned the phone off entirely. Not out of defiance, but preservation. There would be time for conversation later. Right now, I needed space. I moved to the kitchen, retrieved a slice of the apple tart I had baked earlier, and sat back down at the table. I ate slowly, without rush, savoring the cinnamon and brown sugar, the flaky crust that melted just right on my tongue. It was the kind of dessert Riley used to beg me to make when she was little, the kind she now pretended not to like because it wasn't trendy enough. I thought about her face when she saw the post. I imagined the way her fingers must have frozen mid-scroll, the way her stomach turned when she recognized her own words, uncurated, unfiltered, staring back at her. She had posted them so carelessly, believing no one who mattered would ever see, but she forgot that I was still watching. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because I wanted to understand. By 7:15, I turned the phone back on. 17 missed calls, dozens of texts. My account had doubled in followers. Strangers were sharing the post. Some praised it, some questioned it. A few called me cruel, a few thanked me. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I posted a second time. This time, just words on a black background. Sometimes love means not looking away. No images, no screenshots, just that. Then I logged off. I closed the app, set the phone down, and went to my sewing machine. I had a patchwork quilt I'd been meaning to finish for weeks. My fingers found their rhythm as the needle dipped and rose, dipped and rose. It felt grounding. Tactile, real, not pixels, not performance, just fabric, thread, and time. Outside, the streetlights buzzed to life. Across the street, the neighbors sat on their porch swing, wrapped in jackets, talking low beneath a blanket. And somewhere, not far from me, a girl sat in a room lit only by a screen, seeing herself for the first time through someone else's eyes. By morning, the storm had arrived. Not in the sky over Madison, Wisconsin, where the weather remained cool and dry, but through the screens that governed everyone's lives. There was no thunder, no lightning, no rain, just the quiet buzz of digital fury. My phone began vibrating before I'd even finished pouring my coffee. It rattled against the counter, insistent and angry, like a hornet trapped in a jar. I didn't look at it right away. I moved through my morning the way I always did, slow, steady, intentional. I folded the dish towel, opened the blinds in the living room, let the pale light spill across the hardwood floor. I fed the cat. I toasted a slice of bread and smeared it with peach preserves. I sat at the table and ate it in silence while the phone continued to buzz. At 7:42 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Not the mailman, not a neighbor. It was Mark. I opened the door and saw the strain in his face before he spoke. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. And I imagined he hadn't. He stood with his hands clenched in his jacket pockets, his shoulders stiff. His jaw moved once, twice, as if trying to shape a sentence and failing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask to come in. He simply said, "We need to talk." I stepped aside. He walked past me into the kitchen and sat in the chair I had just vacated. I made him coffee without asking. He didn't thank me. He asked why I had done it, why I hadn't come to him first, why I had embarrassed his daughter, why I had gone public. I listened to every question. I watched his hands shake slightly as he gripped the mug. I let the silence stretch long between us. Then I told him everything. I told him what I had seen, what I had saved, what I had read with my own eyes, not from secondhand gossip or assumptions, but from Riley's own posts, her own words, her own performances. I told him how many nights I had sat alone, watching her unravel herself one image at a time. I told him about the cruelty, the recklessness, the danger. He interrupted, said I should have come to him, said this should have stayed in the family, but I asked him what family means when no one's paying attention. I asked him when the last time was that he looked beyond the surface of his daughter's life. He had no answer. He left without finishing his coffee. I sat back down and stared at the mug he'd left behind. The steam still rose from it, curling into the air like something trying to disappear. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the weight of the world pressing in against the windows. Later that morning, Dina called. Her voice was clipped and sharp. She told me I had crossed a line, that I had traumatized Riley, that I had no idea what it was like raising a teenager today. I let her speak. I didn't argue. There was no point. She wasn't calling to understand. She was calling to defend, to contain, to protect the image of a family already fractured. After that, Riley blocked me. Not just on Instagram, but everywhere. Phone, email, social media. My name was erased from her feed. My comments deleted. I became the villain in a narrative she didn't write but felt forced to finish. I received messages from people I didn't know. Some praised me, called me brave, said they wished their parents or grandparents would speak up the way I had. Others scolded me, said I had betrayed trust, that I was cruel, calculating, vindictive. I didn't respond to any of them. The post kept spreading. A local blog picked it up, then a parenting group. Then a high school teacher I used to work with shared it, writing something about accountability and silence. The image had become untethered from my control. It was no longer mine. Not really. It belonged to the wind. At noon, I turned off all notifications. I shut down the app and placed my phone in the drawer by the sink. I went for a walk through Vilas Park. The sky was overcast and the ducks were gathering near the pond. I sat on a bench by the water and watched the world exist without hashtags, without updates, without likes or comments. It was a strange relief. I thought about Riley. I imagined her curled up in her room, curtains drawn, her face pale and clenched. I didn't want her to be hurting. I didn't want to break her. I only wanted her to see herself clearly, to pause long enough to feel what she'd been putting out into the world, to stop performing and start thinking. That night, no one called. No one came over. The house was still, and I moved through it like someone waiting for the rain after a fire. I heated up a bowl of soup, ate it while standing at the kitchen counter, and turned the lights off early. The quiet wasn't peaceful, but it was honest, and honesty, even when it storms, always leaves room for something to grow. The fallout didn't come all at once. It rolled in slowly like fog over the lake near my house. At first it seemed like things might simply go quiet, that perhaps after the chaos of the post and the backlash and the silence, everything would dissolve into that numb kind of forgetting families sometimes lean on when the truth is too uncomfortable. But forgetting is a luxury reserved for people who weren't paying attention in the first place. I had been paying attention for too long to pretend now. It was the Monday after Thanksgiving when I saw Riley again. It had been a week since the post. A week of silence, of unanswered calls, of blocked numbers and closed doors. Mark texted me the night before, said they'd be stopping by after school. He didn't ask. He didn't explain. He simply stated it like a weather report. The knock came at 4:10 p.m. I opened the door and saw her first. Riley. No makeup, hair pulled back, shoulders hunched like she'd been trying to disappear for days. Her eyes didn't rise to meet mine. Mark stood behind her, hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. He looked like he had aged a year since I saw him last. I stepped aside to let them in. No words were exchanged. Riley sat on the edge of the couch, stiff and fidgeting. Mark stood by the window. I sat in my usual chair across from them. For a long time, no one spoke. The air in the room was full of static, as if even the furniture understood the weight of what was unspoken. She didn't apologize. I didn't expect her to. She didn't cry, but her lip trembled once when she tried to speak and failed. Mark cleared his throat, said something about wanting to move forward, about understanding each other better, about the need for boundaries. He used the word family a lot. He used the word mistake only once. I listened. I nodded. I said very little. Not because I had nothing to say, but because sometimes silence says what words can't, and I wanted Riley to sit in that silence, to feel the shape of it. When they left, she didn't hug me, but she looked at me just for a second. That was enough. Later that week, I reopened my phone. I hadn't logged into Instagram since the night of the post. I had expected a wasteland, unfollows, backlash, chaos. But something else had happened. The post was still there, though I had archived the screenshots. What remained was the caption. A simple black square. The words, "We become what we post." There were comments now. Dozens of them, from strangers, from acquaintances, from old students who had somehow found the account. Some were angry, some were grateful. A few shared their own stories about daughters, grandsons, friends who had slipped into online versions of themselves they no longer recognized. Some were just there to listen. I read them all. I didn't reply to any of them. A week later, Riley unblocked me. No message, no explanation, but I could see her stories again. Something had changed. The images were different now. Less polished, more mundane. A photo of her cat curled up in sunlight, a picture of the fall leaves on the school steps, a blurry shot of her bedroom ceiling with the caption, "Slow Day." She was quieter, smaller, but not in the way that meant defeated. In the way that meant human. It felt like a beginning. Dina never reached out again. I wasn't surprised. She had always been the type to confuse confrontation with betrayal. I held no resentment toward her. She was doing what she thought she had to do. We all were. Mark called occasionally. He asked how I was. Said he missed my cooking. I invited him over. He didn't come. Not yet. But I heard the intention in his voice, and sometimes that's enough to wait for. December came early that year. The first snow dusted the ground by the second week. I hung my old winter wreath on the door and spent more time baking. I donated half the apple pies to the local shelter and froze the rest. I started writing again. Small essays, notes, fragments of thought I hadn't made room for in years. I kept a notebook beside my bed, filled it with memories of my childhood, of Riley as a toddler, of the trial I won in 1993 that no one in my family ever asked me about. I didn't know what our relationship would look like going forward. I didn't pretend things would go back to the way they were. They shouldn't. But something was opening. A door, a window, a space between us that wasn't performance or punishment. And if she ever chose to step into it, I would be there. Not as a follower, not as an audience, not as a quiet old woman in the background, but as myself. Always watching, always listening, always waiting for her to remember that I was never invisible, not really. It had been almost 2 months since the post. 2 months since the storm had passed through our quiet neighborhood and left behind a different kind of silence. Not the cold, avoiding kind we had all grown so good at, but something else, something more open, more watchful, like walking into a room where someone had just spoken the truth out loud, and now nobody quite knew what to do next. I wasn't using the old account anymore. I had left it up, but I no longer posted there. It had served its purpose. That account had been a mirror, one I had held up when no one else would. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It belonged to the moment, to the fallout, to the reckoning. So I made a new one. I created it on a quiet morning just after New Year's. The sky was unusually clear for January, and the pine trees in the backyard looked etched in crystal. I had taken my morning walk through Buffalo Park, breathed in the frost-hardened air, watched a hawk circle above the canyon ridge. Something about the way it hovered without effort made me feel ready to begin again. I sat at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, phone in hand, and tapped Create New Account. I used my name again, just Maggie Hart this time. No middle initial, no cryptic username. I uploaded a photo taken the week before, one where I stood near the fence line behind the house, wrapped in my flannel coat, smiling without knowing someone was taking my picture. The bio was simple: retired lawyer, amateur gardener, full-time observer. This account wasn't for Riley. It wasn't for Mark or Dina. It wasn't for proving anything or exposing anything or reminding anyone what they had forgotten. It was for me. I started slow. A photo of my tulips starting to break through the dirt in the pot on the windowsill. A close-up of the sourdough loaf I had managed not to burn. A video of the wind chimes on my porch during a rainstorm. The sound delicate and soft and clean. To my surprise, people followed. Not hundreds, not strangers from viral reposts, just quiet accounts. Women in their 60s and 70s. A retired librarian from Oregon. A widowed nurse from Minnesota. A woman in Georgia who wrote poems about her dogs and crocheted blankets for NICUs. They sent little messages, nothing heavy, just comments that felt like real conversation. Love this view. Reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen. My daffodils haven't bloomed yet either. It was connection without performance, a kind of community that didn't demand perfection or provoke envy. Just a handful of women posting what they noticed, what they loved, what they missed. It felt like discovering a room that had always existed, but no one had ever invited me into. Riley hadn't followed the new account. I didn't expect her to. She hadn't said much since that one visit. A few texts here and there. A birthday card in the mail with "Love You" written in sharp, straight letters. We were still rebuilding carefully, like stacking stones in a shallow creek. Each moment had to balance or everything would shift. But I noticed her watching. She didn't like posts. She didn't comment. But sometimes her name appeared in the viewed by list of my stories. She watched my garden grow. She watched the pie crust I floured and folded. She watched the sunrise over the canyon rim. She watched, and that was enough for now. The new account became a kind of journal, a way to remember who I was when no one was asking me questions. I shared memories sometimes, brief ones. A photo of my first courtroom badge, the leather briefcase I never replaced, a ticket stub from a Miles Davis concert in 1977. I didn't explain them. I just let them sit there, like pebbles along the path. And then one afternoon, it happened. I had posted a photo of my mother's ring, a simple gold band with a garnet set in the center. I had worn it every day since she died. The caption read, "She taught me how to speak softly and still be heard." And Riley commented, just one word, beautiful. No emoji, no sarcasm, just that. It sat there like a breadcrumb. I didn't reply, I just left it. Let her know I saw it, that I understood. A few days later, she posted a photo of the desert sky at dusk. Her caption said, "Trying to slow down." And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like she was performing. It felt like she meant it. I followed her again. She didn't follow back, but she didn't block me either, and that too was enough. Sometimes bridges aren't rebuilt. Sometimes they're rerouted, stone by stone, moment by moment, through quieter places, through new accounts,